Hi, and welcome to this week's video blog on Some Assembly Required. With Mother's Day on Monday, I thought I would read a couple of stories about my mom. I had one story published in All in the Family Chicken Soup, and I also had a second story about my mom in last year's Best Mom Ever. So I'm just going to read you these stories because, hey, it's Mother's Day, and who doesn't want to hear stories about moms? So this one in the All in the Family is called A Full House. Like most families, mine is a bit, well, unusual. True, I have a father and a mother who have been married for more than 50 years, but I've had more than 40 siblings. When I was a child, I had two sisters and a brother who were many years older than me, 15, 13, and 11 years older, to be exact. So in grade school, I was the only child of sorts who had older siblings drop by every once in a while. Soon after my 12th birthday, my parents decided to fill our great big house with more children in a rather unconventional way as foster parents. Through the years, my mom and dad showed love to children of all ages, whom they treated as part of the family. As for me, I gained numerous brothers and sisters, both older and younger. There was Hope, who joined our family as a 16-year-old and ended up staying for 2 years. A few years after she left our house, she asked my father to walk her down the aisle at her wedding, a testimony to the special relationship she had developed with my parents. Sandy, an 8-year-old with emotional problems, attached herself to me and sometimes refused to go to court-ordered counseling sessions unless I accompanied her. There were newborn babies like Mark and Stephen, whose smiles and coos are some of my happiest memories of those days. Then there were the twins, a brother and sister who were 5 months old when they arrived. They, like many foster children before them, ended up staying with us for more than 2 years, then becoming eligible for adoption. By this time, my parents had already raised 4 children and were grandparents, but they ended up adopting Jenny and James. Much has been said about the importance and necessity of foster parenting, but being a sibling to foster brothers and sisters brought its own rewards. I reveled in being a big sister to countless children. However, it wasn't always laughter and lightness. I had to share my things and my parents with other children, many of whom had no concept of family life. Yes, there were times I hated having strange kids in my house, playing with my toys, interrupting my schedule. But my parents taught me that these relatively small sacrifices made a big difference in the lives of these neglected and abused kids. I had a real chance to make a difference, to show sisterly love and affection to children whose own families had not shown much love. With my parents' encouragement, I could play a small role in helping to ease their pain and to show them that someone cared about them. I also knew the love that my parents showered on these children in no way took away from their love and care for me. I never felt neglected or overlooked, no matter how packed the house became or how often I had to sacrifice my wants to their needs. My parents raised foster children for 3 decades. Yes, that's right, 30 years. Amazingly, many of these foster children who passed through our house, whether for a few months or a few years, kept in contact with my parents after they left. Some sent annual Christmas cards, some call my parents regularly, and a few occasionally even visit. All a testimony to the love and impact my parents had on their lives. Today, as I raise 4 children of my own, I look forward to a time when my husband and I might reach out to other children in need of a temporary haven. I hope one day that I can pass along some of the things learned by watching my parents foster children and teach them about love and life. Now, that story that I wrote appeared, like I said, in the Chicken Soup All in the Family several years ago, and it's one of the stories that, as I hope would touch your heart, as having all those children come through my parents' home when I was a teenager touched mine. Now, I'm going to read my story from Best Mom Ever, which came out last year for Chicken Soup. And it's on the same theme of foster parenting. That really had an impact on my life, and I think on my parenting. As I tell groups when I speak, I learned a lot about how to handle difficult children, how to love kids when they were at their most unlovable. Because these kids came to our house. They had no idea what a family looked like. They had no idea how a family dinner looked like. They were messed up on so many levels because of all the emotional, physical, mental abuse that they suffered at the hands of people who were supposed to love them. So learning these things and seeing these things really impacted how I raised my children. And it gave me the knowledge that no child is unreachable. So let me read A Mom to Many about my wonderful mother. My parents began taking in foster children when I was 12. 40 kids eventually passed through their home. Each one held a special place in our hearts, and each one knew without a doubt that he or she was loved and truly part of the family. Even as a sarcastic and unappreciative teenager, I knew something special was happening in our home. It wasn't easy to be a foster sister to kids who sometimes stole from me, ruined my possessions, and invaded my space. But I also knew it wasn't easy for my parents, especially for my stay-at-home mother. Not many moms would willingly and lovingly continue raising kids for half a century, but that's what my mom did. She started as most moms do, with children of her own, having 2 girls and a boy before her 25th birthday. 11 years after the youngest of the original trio was born, along came a 4th child, me. I felt a bit like an only child when my older sibling left for jobs and college. That didn't last long, however, because that's when my parents felt the call to be foster parents. There were babies and preschoolers, tweens and teens, all of whom needed more than just food and shelter. They needed love and comfort and the chance to experience what makes a house a home. My parents gave that to them and more. Now that I'm a mother of my own, I marvel at how my mom related to these battered, bruised kids who have been treated so abominably by their own moms and dads and other relatives. Many of these kids were sexually, physically, mentally, and verbally abused. Some of them had never eaten a meal with the entire family seated around a table. They had never had a space of their own in a house. They had never been unconditionally loved. Their backstories would break your heart. Sometimes they arrived at my parents' house in the middle of the night with nothing but the clothes they were wearing. The luckier ones had a few belongings stuffed into a black trash bag. All of them were frightened and lonely, and many of them missed their parents. Mama Jo, as she was called, my mom, would greet them at the door with her heart open wide. She would settle them into our house as if they were her long-lost sons or daughters returning home. Everyone was treated like a full member of the family. My mom taught them the things that most of us learned from growing up in normal, loving families, things like how to treat one another with kindness, how to do chores, and how to act at the dinner table. She advocated for them at school, but expected them to do their own schoolwork. She gave them hugs, but meted out consequences when necessary. She prayed for them and showed them how God cared for them as well. She wasn't perfect, and she would be the first to admit she made mistakes. But the kids understood that she was someone who cared, who had their best interests at heart, and who was a safe haven in the storm of their lives. Most of all, she gave them unconditional love and acceptance. My mom never allowed a child's current circumstances to dictate a child's future. She's a firm believer that people can change, and kids can too. That attitude, coupled with the amazing successes she and my father achieved with these foster children, led the local social services department to call my parents first with the most difficult cases. My parents even adopted twins who had been foster kids in our home for several years before their biological mom and dad gave up their parental rights. The boy-girl twins were 14 years younger than me, meaning my parents willingly extended their child-raising years to start again with preschoolers when I was graduating from high school. I know my parents made a lasting difference in the lives of those foster children because we still keep in touch. The troubled 10-year-old boy who bounced back and forth from his mom's house to ours as a foster kid now has a successful military career. The abused teenage girl who had started to make unwise choices became a nurse who asked my father to walk her down the aisle when she got married. The sexually abused 9-year-old girl who developed an annoying personality to cope credits my mom for showing her she was lovable. Now she's married with children of her own. When I reflect on the half-century my mother spent raising kids, the majority of whom were not hers by birth, my heart overflows with love and gratitude for the example she set for me and countless others. I try to be as good a mother as she is. If more mothers were like Mama Jo, the world would indeed be a better place. Thank you for joining me for this week's tribute to my mom in honor of Mother's Day. I hope you will join me next week when I do another video blog on Some Assembly Required.